all that.
Yeah,
he's
like
sitting there
7:45 and then 8:01.
He had the full experience. It was, I'm done. This happens it happens every year. We can't play that clip.
We can't. There's a lot of vulgarity in it.
There's some problems.
But, I think there's a lot of people within this fan base that were like, yeah, I was there. I get it.
It's just a hilarious juxtaposition from that to the very next clip, like you said, 15 minutes later, walking down the concourse with the Gamecocks chant.
Yeah,
I mean, but that's what it was, and that was why it was so awesome. I mean, you go from go ahead touchdown, get a defensive stop, and you can win the game, and it becomes more of a reality where you get a sack, short sack, but on third down, and now it's 4th and 5. So get a stop here, we're off the field, and basically the game's over. Kneel, we're gonna win this game. And it turns from that to the realization that, okay, we're down again. A guy just made a one-handed catch, got in the end zone. Now we've got the ball back. Luckily we have a minute, but this is gonna be tough.
Yep.
You got to go down the field and score a touchdown in 1 minute, or you could have scored a field goal at that point, but we're either going to try to go down and tie it.
Yep.
And Gamecock fans have seen 2 games this year where tough circumstances, right?
Sure.
One of those was a very long field goal, but you've seen an opportunity to, tie or win the game at the end and it not go your way, and just everything about it, that swing of emotions. Actually, Wes pointed this out yesterday. I mean, how many times do you get to see an actual game-winning drive by your team? And then to have it, all the storylines, breaking the streak, T.Ly Drinkwitz coming back and doing that right after surrendering what seemed to be maybe a back-breaking touchdown on a 4th down, one-handed catch, and the way in which you did it, the play, Rocket Sanders, pure will, great play call, but pure will by him. It was just awesome.
It was one of those, and again, we haven't settled on a name for this. We had a lot of submissions yesterday, but Rocket's refusal to go down, right? Like that's just somebody that, again, he's played a lot of college football and is a unit to try and bring down himself, but he just refused to quit on that play. Kept driving, kept his legs turning, and was just bouncing off guys left and right. And again, I don't know what Rocket's career at the next level is going to be, but I think he cemented himself in Carolina history, if nothing else, for that one play alone.
Yeah, just 1 year, right? And I mean, Gamecock fans, since the transfer portal era began, have always had this dream of having Rocket Sanders on the team. It was kind of like, it reminded me in a way, when Spencer Rattler got benched at Oklahoma, and people on social media started going, Spencer Rattler, hey, Shane Beamer was an assistant there. Did you know that? And
it almost seems kind of like a pipe dream, right?
Yeah, it kind of, hey, this would be cool if this ever happened. But, there's no reason at the time to actually think it could be possible. But then lo and behold, it becomes possible. And then it happens, and it's great. And similar thing with Rocket Sanders, a lot of Gamecock fans either made that trip to Arkansas in 2022, or heck, a ton of them. Obviously, everybody, Gamecock fan, watched that game where Rocket Sanders goes off for, what do you have, 140, 150 in that game.
Yep.
In the backfield with KJ Jefferson, and then you start thinking, hey, wouldn't it be cool if Rocket Sanders transferred here one day? Like, he would be a perfect fit. And then you say, oh, did you know Dow Loggins came from Arkansas and he knows him? And so it ends up happening. And, I think the past few games have really been what everybody envisioned when Rocket Sanders came here. Obviously the numbers against Vandy and A&M, the numbers weren't as great in this game for Rocket, for South Carolina on the ground. They went over 100 yards. Rocket had, 50-something yards rushing.
Yeah.
But that last play, which was technically a pass, I mean, that is why you recruit guys like Rocket Sanders, because not everybody can do stuff like that, and he can. That was a I'm better than you type of play.
Absolutely was. And again, we spent all day yesterday reacting to this, and rightfully so. It's a huge win and another feather in cap what's been a successful year for this team as they look ahead to Wofford and Clemson to close out the regular season. We didn't even get to other things that happened around the SEC over the weekend. There's a lot of cupcake games. Alabama beat Mercer, Texas A&M beat New Mexico State. Games that are pretty inconsequential, all things considered, as long as you win them. But two pretty key matchups. The only other ranked versus ranked matchup in all of college football this weekend outside of Columbia was in Athens, Georgia, with Georgia beating Tennessee for the 8th year in a row, 31-17, in a game that Georgia came into coming off the Ole Miss loss with their back up against the wall. They could not afford to lose any more games. They wanted any shot at the college football playoff. And Tennessee, coming in as the number 7 team in the country at that point in time, now finds themselves with their back against the wall coming out of this game.
Well, Tennessee, it was not. Let's see if this is fair, Tyler. This was as close to a must-win for Georgia as possible.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Tennessee, not as much of a must-win, but now you're putting yourself. Forget even the rest of the season. Now you're making it a question, which is not where you want to be. You don't want to be on the cut line. There are a lot of teams there, if we're talking about college football playoff.
Sure.
Tennessee will take care of UTEP. No disrespect to the Miners. Is that right? Miners.
Yes, that's correct. Miners.
Yes. You got to play Vanderbilt in Nashville.
Not easy.
Not easy. So right now you're sitting at 8-2 overall, 5-2 in the conference if you're Tennessee. And, I think early season wins for Tennessee. You looked at that early season slate, and at the beginning of the year, you're going, that's a pretty nice schedule. You got NC State out of conference, who's top 25. You got Oklahoma in Norman. Whoops. Neither of those teams are good, right? I mean, they won both of them. Right. You play the schedule that's in front of you. You beat NC State handily. They stink. Oklahoma, not very good, as we've seen. You do have the win over Bama, which is going to be something you hang your hat on.
Sure.
If Tennessee can finish the season, 10-2, they're going to say we're 10-2, we're 6-2 in conference, and we beat Alabama, who is very likely to be in the college football playoff, it seems right now.
Yep.
But on the other hand, you have 2 losses, and your resume, aside from the Bama win, is not incredible.
No. And one thing that's working against Tennessee as well, and I don't know if everybody's aware of this, if things go the way, chalk, as we say, as we anticipate to go in the last 2 weeks, and you have, let's say, Texas beat A&M and everybody else handled their business as far as favorite teams in the SEC, despite the fact they have the exact same record and Tennessee has the win over Alabama, Alabama would be in the SEC championship game. Are you aware of that with the new tiebreaker system?
Yes.
That because multiple teams are set to have 6-2 records in conference play, that head-to-head is negated, and it goes back to records against common opponents, which out of all the 2-loss teams in the SEC, Alabama has the best. So Tennessee would not have the benefit of playing a 13th game in the SEC championship game to help themselves with an automatic shot at being in the playoff. And I can guarantee there's a lot of people in Knoxville that can be very angry when the SEC championship game gets announced and they're not in it. Like, wait a minute, we beat Alabama.
Yeah,
what the heck's going on here? But that's the new system. That's the new tiebreaker. That's how this works. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just saying that's how it works.
Now, under your scenario, you just threw a lot at us. Under your scenario, you said Texas would lose to A&M.
No, Texas would beat A&M.
Okay,
I'm going off of the favored team winning the matchup.
Okay, so in that instance, it would be Alabama and Texas in the SEC.
It would be Alabama and Texas in the SEC championship game. That is the most likely matchup we have as of right now. Now, if A&M beats Texas, then we get a little more funky.
And if you're Bama, on one hand, you're like, we made the SEC title game.
Yep.
We should be in. But if you lose, you got a third loss.
That's the funny thing. I've said with a lot of confidence, we got a cut from Kiffin we're going to get to here in a little bit, but I've said with a lot of confidence for most of the season that I thought the loser of the championship game should be in regardless. But there's certain scenarios that could present themselves where it's like, maybe playing that 13th game is more of a detriment.
Yeah, it's just so... I mean, Wes said this the other day. The committee does not have an easy job. When you look at, you expand the playoff, now more deserving teams will get in. It's like we've really, with this, the way this year has gone, you were just creating more teams that are deserving to get into a 12-man field.
Well, that's the thing. When you went from 2 to 4, and you went from a computer system to a committee system with the BCS, putting in 1 and 2. Well, 3 and 4 mad. And then you go to 4 teams. Well, now 5 and 6 are mad, and sometimes 7 and 8, depending on how many quality teams have a chance at making in. Now you go to 12, and well, guess what? 13, 14, and probably 15, 16 are going to be mad. So you're just expanding on which teams are going to be upset for getting left out now.
Well, I mean, right now, if we're laying odds, South Carolina's going to be one of those teams. If they finish undefeated, let's say they beat Wofford, they beat Clemson, which the second one of those is a pretty significant if. I mean, I think, some of the computers right now are actually favoring Clemson in that game, so it might be an upset technically. But if Carolina's 9-3, they're going to be sitting there going, we've won X number of straight games. We've got this schedule. All of our losses are in the first half of the season. One of them we got hosed. We deserve to be in. And they might be team 15, 16, 17, And so, and look, in that scenario, some people may say Carolina has no case. That's not true. They would have some type of case, and there are levels to that. There are going to be teams that have cases that get left out.
And Terry and I talk about this a lot. We operate on the think system in college football because unlike every other professional sports league, there's not a clear-cut path to making the playoff where, hey, if you're in the NFL, you either win your division or you have a good enough record to be one of the wild card teams, and that's it. There's no committee. There's no debate. You just either are good enough or you aren't. But in college sports, because there's so many teams, you have to impress people with your wins. And we go that, well, if Carolina was in the Big 12, Carolina was in the ACC, they'd have this record, they'd have that record. If you put, Clemson in the SEC, they'd be a 500 team, or Penn State in the SEC, they'd be a 5-7 team. Like, we operate off of all these hypotheticals because there's no way to prove it across the board. And we put it in the hands of these, 12 to 13 people that we justify as the end-all, be-all, and saying, you guys decide who's played for the championship, and I promise we won't be mad, but we still get mad either way because it's never going to be perfect.
Never going to be perfect. And, they have their criteria, and it's already evident that they don't always use the criteria. They use them selectively, and so
they use it when it benefits them.
So there's going to be teams that benefits this year, and there's going to be instances where it does not benefit a team. And so if you're a team that's not an obvious inclusion, meaning a conference champion, or, somebody that's just blatantly, a one-loss SEC team is an obvious inclusion, I think. If you're not one of those, if you fall somewhere else and you're on the line, you're kind of just leaving it up to chance, honestly.
Talk more about this coming up next. I believe John Bryce from Football Scoop set to join us, talk a little bit about what's going on in the SEC, maybe some playoff talk as well, as the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating rolls along. Tyler and Chris on your Tuesday here on The Game.
Another one of our great partners here on The Game, our friends over at Krantz Cooling and Heating. That's Krantz with a K, Cooling with a K. KrantzCooling.com is where you can go to learn more about their services. Since 1983, they have been servicing families, homes, and businesses right here in the Midlands. Again, family-owned operations. So if you're looking for somebody who's reliable, who's a local family-owned business to help you with your home or business's HVAC needs, contact them, KrantzCooling.com or 803-672-3224. I'm one of their happy customers. They've been out to my home several times, installed a mini split for me. They've addressed another problem that one of my HVAC units was having. I trusted them to come out to my mom's home when she moved to Irmo. I trust Krantz Heating and Cooling. You can do the same. KrantzCooling.com or 803-672-3224. Give them a call today.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler Head and Chris Clark along with you on your Tuesday here on the game. Time to talk a little more college football with the guy John Bryce from footballscoop.com joining us now on the Love Chevrolet phone lines. John, appreciate your time this morning. Look, we've been debating back and forth really these past couple weeks about where South Carolina stands across all of college football. We'll learn their latest rankings with CFP Top 25 coming up tonight. But in your opinion, in terms of playing the best football right now, is Carolina one of those teams that should be in the conversation around the best in the nation?
South Carolina's playing as well as anybody right now. I was looking over some awards ballots and some Coach of the Year, things like that. And honestly, right now in the SEC, I would have Shane Beamer, Mike Elko, and Clark Lee as my top three coaches for SEC Coach of the Year. And the way that Lenore Sellers has come on, the way that South Carolina is getting after the quarterbacks, the Gamecocks, and we always know they're good at special teams. So the Gamecocks are playing a really complete style of football right now.
John, it's Chris. Appreciate you joining us, man. Let's kind of recap what this past weekend of the college football action did, right? Just in terms of the college football playoff picture. Obviously, there's some implications. We're still waiting to see, who's going to play in the conference title games. We're still waiting on tonight's batch of rankings because at the end of the day, it really matters what the committee thinks. But in your mind, there was more chaos this past weekend. Who were the big winners and the big losers from this past weekend?
I think the SEC was a winner because the Big 12 was a loser. With BYU going down, I think that pretty much cements the Big 12 as a one-bid league. I think the ACC is virtually cemented as a one-bid league. I suppose there's a scenario out there where maybe Miami and SMU could both get in, one with the auto bid and one at large. But I think that's increasingly unlikely with each and every week. So to me, those were the biggest winners of the weekend. Certainly Georgia kept its season alive. It would have been eliminated from playoff contention. I know Tennessee is very worried about now being the SEC's odd team out as things currently stand. We'll see how it goes with the CFP rankings tonight. But I thought that it was a really bad weekend for the Big 12. The ACC's had multiple bad weekends, and the SEC got done what it needed to get done.
Speaking of Tennessee, there again, talking to John Bryce from footballscoop.com. Of course, losing to number 12 Georgia this past weekend, and we'll see where they fall in the rankings coming up tonight. A lot of people kind of looking at bowl projections and stuff, expecting them to be that maybe first team out when it comes to the SEC. What ranking for Tennessee tonight should have people hitting the panic button in Knoxville?
I mean, look, if they're outside of the top 12, they're going to have a hard time, I think, clawing back into the top 12 because there's just not a lot left on their schedule. UTEP this weekend, UTEP is terrible. And then, obviously, they close with Vanderbilt. The Vanderbilt game is certainly no gimme, as we've all seen already this year. We saw them beat Alabama already. They had Texas on the ropes. They've had a couple of other nice wins. They took out Virginia Tech to open the season. That Virginia Tech team was a lot of people's darling in the preseason to be an ACC contender and a potential CFP contender. So Tennessee is got a lot of work left to do and just not done a lot with its non-conference schedule when it comes down to it. I know people are going to point and say, well, they battled back to beat an Alabama team that lost to Vanderbilt or whatever, but that Alabama team also very early in the season went on the road to Wisconsin and absolutely hammered the Badgers, who were in a position to beat number one Oregon this past week, whereas Tennessee's marquee non-conference game was a quote-unquote neutral site contest against a pretty mediocre North Carolina State team. So I just think that Tennessee's not eliminated by any stretch, but Tennessee has a lot of work left to do with not a lot of meaningful work on its plate, and then still needs a lot of help.
John, we know that the selection committee, in terms of the actual decision is not a computer. It's a group of people. They can use computers. They can use data. But it's people that are going to pick these teams. Some of the computer models, to whatever small percentage it may be, and the ones I've seen are, 14, 15, 20, 25 for South Carolina. They have 3 losses. That, in some people's mind, may automatically disqualify them. But point is, it seems like there is a chance. Obviously, they have to win out. Some other things have to break for them. What's obvious to me is if they somehow snuck in, they would have to jump at least one, probably multiple, 2-loss SEC teams. Is there any scenario where a Gamecocks team that won out could jump, say, a 2-loss Texas if they lost to A&M? Like, what would the path be in your mind?
I think they could if, and again, you make a great point because they would need a lot of help, but it's not impossible, and it's not as unlikely as the Dumb and Dumber. So you're saying there's a chance line. I think that if they went out and they're really convincing against Clemson, then they just need some help from that point forward. I don't think they could jump a Texas team if Texas advanced to the SEC championship game and then lost. I think that would be a little too much work for them to do. But if A&M handles Texas at home here in a couple of weeks and South Carolina is really convincing and dominant in its work the rest of the season, then I do think that there's an outside shot for the Gamecocks, certainly to at least have some positive nerves on Selection Sunday to see where things would fall. Because, again, they would have closing like that. They would have a strong win against the Clemson team that is still closer to the top of the standings than not in the ACC, and they would have some other nice wins on their resume. And look, South Carolina should be a one-loss team right now. What are they, 6 points from being a one-loss team right now? And they led in the fourth quarter of 2 of their 3 losses. So this is, again, a dangerous South Carolina team, a team that I think is Shane Beamer's best coaching job of his time thus far in Columbia.
Again, talking to John Bryce of FootballScoop.com, we know this 12-team playoff right now is kind of in a bit of a trial period for the next 2 years. We don't know what happens 2026 and beyond. And there's a lot of thought that if the SEC and the Big Ten don't like the representation in year number 1, they could really be the catalyst for blowing things up and really shifting what the future of this looks like. Where does that line kind of fall for you? And we'll just look at this from the SEC perspective of Greg Sankey saying, I feel like more of my team should be in. We need to do something else going forward.
Yeah, I think that expansion is probably inevitable to 14 or 16 teams by 26. There's too much money involved. There's going to be too much consternation from either or both of the SEC and the Big Ten as all this shakes out. My concern there is, and you guys know it well, from being in the heart of SEC country and knowing how much every week matters. The more you expand, the more you water down the regular season. And so I do have a concern about that from just a history of college football, a love of college football, knowing how much you sit on the edge of your seats every weekend, especially in the SEC with college football. So the more you expand, the more you water down the regular season a little bit. But I do think it will expand. Everybody I've talked to expects it to go to a minimum of 14 teams in 26, if not more.
John, we got about a minute left here. So real quick, there's been some movement already in the coaching carousel. What has really caught your attention? Anything to really keep an eye on and watch for, whether it's a particular job, a particular guy, a particular situation?
You know, I think if North Carolina continues to finish its season pretty solidly and can beat NC State to close the regular season, continue to have it indicated to me that Mack Brown will likely retire. The other most stunning development is Florida sticking with Billy Napier, even though I like Billy a lot. I think he's a really fine man. And it seems Arkansas will stick with Sam Pittman as well. A lot of that, guys, has to do with revenue sharing, the uncertainty of the House settlement, the potential for expanded rosters, NIL's ongoing impact on the college sports, especially college football. So I do think at the power level, this is going to be a slower coaching carousel.
And he is John Bryce from FootballScoop.com. Appreciate your insight as always, and she'll be checking with you down the line as well.
Yeah, Tyler, Chris, thanks for the visit, boys. Have a good one.
Absolutely. It is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling Heating. I want to go off something that you mentioned a little bit there. Who should be the SEC Coach of the Year? We'll discuss that coming up next. It's the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling Heating here on The Game.
All right, as you keep up with all the great college football action, man, it's been a heck of a season. A lot more to go. If you're at your home and saying, man, enough's enough. We got to upgrade this setup that we got, whether it's a man cave that you need to make some tweaks to make it better, whether you don't have that man cave and you've always wanted it, outdoor, screen porch, patio, living room, bedroom, whatever it is, the folks at Integrated Media can help you with it. Michael and Nathan, they've been to my home. They've been to Wes Mitchell's home. Let them to come out to yours. They can make your dreams come true from an audiovisual standpoint. They can also do complete smart home systems if you need security and cameras, if you want to be able to control everything from the touch of a button, thermostat, lighting, all that stuff, all your devices from your smartphone, they can do it for you. IntegratedMediaInc.com, Integrated Media Columbia on Instagram or Facebook, or 803-948-8327.
Welcome back in. Is the Gamecock Collab presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyrod and Chris Clark along with you on your Tuesday here in the game, as it is every Tuesday during football season. Coach Beamer speaking at 1 o'clock. He'll give his final thoughts on what happened against Missouri this past weekend. As I said to Jack a little bit earlier, tried to sell us on the idea of Vanderbilt being a viable threat. Look, I don't play on the team. I can take this stance. Carolina should maul Wofford this weekend and move on to Clemson at 8-3. Excuse
Are you
me.
disrespecting the
I am
Terriers?
100% disrespecting the Terriers.
You know, we have a lot of Wofford people
I
who are
understand
like,
that.
there's carryover.
I understand that. There's
Okay.
a lot of people locally. I did the same thing last year with Furman. We got a lot of Furman grads listening in the audience as well. But again, Beamer's going to try and tell us how great of a team Wofford is. I'm not buying it.
So what I'm about to do live on air is the first time I've done this year. I'm looking up Wofford's record this year. Couldn't tell you.
I looked at it earlier. I forget what the exact record is. They got a couple losses. They lost to Citadel this past weekend.
They got a couple. They do. I did know that they lost to the Citadel.
They've had to play like 6 quarterbacks this year.
Yeah. It's, they've gone away, which there's not a sense of dread about this game yet. There's not a sense of dread about this game, period. I shouldn't have said yet, because they don't run the option anymore.
That is true. Citadel does, which, by the way, Clemson's going to have to deal with this weekend, which could become a little worse for wear coming next weekend with those cut blocks. I'm not looking at the Firehouse Subs text line right now, but I can guarantee you there's one person that's yelling at me about, remember the Citadel game, or something along those lines of Carolina getting upset by an inferior opponent. I'm sorry. This is too good of a team. Carolina shouldn't have any problems this weekend.
I mean, remember the Wofford games from back in the day, but the difference, I mean, they ran the option. I mean, there were some close calls in those games. Wofford, by the way, is 5-6 right now.
Yeah, and they run a traditional spread option or spread offense that's not anything quirky or weird like the triple option is. So Carolina should have no problems. Should win this game, advance to 8-3, and move on to Clemson next weekend.
Wofford has played some ranked opponents at their level. Richmond, which they won. Bill and Mary, they lost. And then Mercer, Chattanooga.
Mercer's good, man.
And East Tennessee State.
Mercer's 9-1 and got beaten senseless by Alabama this past weekend.
Good team. Good team.
They got paid a lot of money to do it.
And you mentioned Furman earlier. Wofford actually won that game. So Wofford beat Furman, lost to the Citadel. So, yeah, I mean, that is going to be some interesting, I think, Beamer won't be able to go as far with the, kind of mental gymnastics.
He's not going to be able, they got a first-round talent today.
Yeah,
it's like, no, they don't have that.
And you can't say, gosh, you got to come in here and prepare for the option. It's terrible. That would be a very valid point. It'll be, they've got our full attention and that kind of thing, which it should be. But
you're not going to overlook them, but you're a better team. And for anybody that's saying, well, remember Old Dominion, this is a better team than the team that played Old Dominion. That was a team that's still trying to figure itself out. If they played Old Dominion again this weekend, Carolina would probably win by 4 touchdowns. I feel pretty confident in that.
I know, and that's crazy, right? I mean, but it really is, and you never know week to week, but like the difference in how you view this team, not even the view of this team. Go back and watch both games. Go back and watch the last few games for Carolina. Go back and watch that first game. It's night and day, and it's not just an like that first game was the aberration, not what's been happening. Like this current version of the team is what you have now, and I think it's very interesting, and not to just completely. At some point this week, we'll talk a little more about Wofford, but everybody's kind of looking ahead to that Clemson game, and this one, I was talking to somebody this morning. Is such a big game for both teams.
Sure.
Because whatever small chance either of these teams have to make the college football playoff, you absolutely have to have this last game.
Of course.
And it's a rivalry game, and there's a lot at stake. I think it's interesting to look at how this game is viewed by both teams. I think Clemson's looking around a little bit more worried than they typically have been. Carolina fans have more confidence than they probably typically do.
And we have, obviously, a week and a half to dive into all the specifics of that matchup, which we'll do some this week and plenty next week, as well leading up to it. I want to go back to something that John Bryce was talking to us about there in that last segment when he mentioned, Beamer's candidacy for SEC Coach of the Year. And I was kind of thinking about this last night as well before he even, brought that point up. But you got a lot of really strong candidates for that award this year. Obviously, Beamer, what he's been able to do with potential of maybe having a 9 to 10 win a year if they continue to win out and end the year really, really strong. You got Elko in his first year at A&M with the potential to maybe go to Atlanta and play for an SEC championship game and maybe make the playoff. You have Kalen DeBoer taking over the reins for Nick Saban and being in line to make the playoffs in year number 1, which, again, that's not as impressive, but still, that's a lot of expectations placed on the coach, and to be able to, for the most part, keep the train on the tracks is worth something. Steve Sarkisian coming in his first year in the SEC, maybe playing for and winning the SEC title in that first year. And then, of course, Clark Lee at Vanderbilt, who has far exceeded everyone's expectations for what Vanderbilt should have been this year.
A lot of times, a Coach of the Year award, and I mean, it's going to sound funny. I'm not trying to be funny. It just what I have observed. A lot of times, that's a congrats, you didn't suck as bad as we thought you were going to award.
That is very true. Or you just blow expectations out of the water in year 1.
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
I mean, I
guess that kind of goes hand in hand.
But now it does, because if you do, they don't give a Coach of the Year award to a guy that goes 5-7 and you thought he was going to be 1-11. They don't do that.
Sure.
There has to be a baseline of you did have a very good year, but there are levels to it, because a coach who, doesn't go win a championship or doesn't win the conference, they can still win conference. Coach, we saw it with Lamont Paris, right? Last year. I mean, they were very, very close to winning the conference, but they were picked, at the bottom of the league, and they go out and have a much better than expected year, but it wasn't just a much better than expected year. It was, they just, by any measure, I mean, insert any team logo into what they did, and it was deserving of that. So, John Bryce brought up his guys, Beamer, Mike Elko, Clark Lee. Clark Lee, much better than expected year, and it's been a good year, and they have taken down some teams that they were not expected to. Mike Elko has come in and probably fair at Texas A&M, very talented team. They have underachieved, I think, but he comes in and does a really good job in year 1. Shane Beamer rebounding from a 5-7 season. Expectations are nationally kind of low, and so that says something. I think that those are the top 3 guys, but there are so many deserving. I mean, if Josh Heupel got the award, let's say they make the SEC title game.
Yeah.
I mean, he would be deserving of it, really.
Sure.
So there are a lot of coaches that you could put in there. I don't know who's going to win, and I don't think anybody knows because we've still got time left in this season. But Shane Beamer is going to be in there, and I think he'll be, he's well deserving to be in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, what were the expectations for a lot of people? It was right around 500, 5 wins, somewhere around there, to maybe be at skinnier teeth making a bowl game. And we're talking about them. We'll see where they are in the rankings tonight of being a fringe playoff team and a team that could be maybe the first team out when it comes to the playoffs, which again far exceed what the expectations were placed on this team prior to the year. And look, is your Hall of Fame resume built on winning the SEC Coach of the Year? It's not, but it is significant to see who they decide to give it to every single year based on, especially in how chaotic of a year this has been in the SEC, who ends up winning it.
Yeah, I mean, just a super chaotic year. I mean, it's so wild that some of the things you can say about this season, talking to John in that last segment, let's say Texas loses to A&M. Let's say they beat Kentucky, lose to A&M. Their most impressive win is at a lot of fun.
So yesterday being Reaction Monday, because we were obviously taking phone calls and getting all the thoughts coming away from the Missouri game, I did not get to my favorite segment of the week, the oddities of college football. We're doing that coming up next because, oh boy, some weird things happened. It's the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Schooling and Heating. Tyler and Chris on your Tuesday morning here on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Schooling Heating. Tyler and Chris along with you on your Tuesday. Appreciate everybody checking us out on the Game TV, sponsored by Shepherd's Class. Powered by Integrated Media. As always, you can check us out on the 107.5 Game app as well. Go to the iTunes Store, the Google Play Store, give it a download, and take us with you wherever you go. Chris, you have seen a lot of college football over the years. Mm-hmm. What's the heaviest player you've ever seen score a touchdown that you can recall?
Oh, man. Let me think. I can't remember who, but, just running through my head is a big man touchdown of, say, a 300-pounder. You know,
that's big.
I couldn't give you a specific, guy or weight. I know I've seen one.
That's big.
Yeah.
We're in the oddities of college football, where I embrace all the weird things that happen over the course of a college football weekend. Southern University taking on Arkansas Pine Bluff. Willie Miles, defensive lineman for the Jaguars, Southern, picks up a fumble, takes it 7 yards for a touchdown to secure the 31-9 victory.
7
yard fumble return touchdown. 350 pounds is big Willie Miles. For reference, in the history of the NFL, he would tie the heaviest players to ever score a touchdown in the National Football League with Shawn Rodgers and Sam Adams. Shawn Rodgers, a teammate of our guy Langston Moore with the Detroit Lions back in the day, of 350 pounds. Usually been that big, do not score touchdowns. But shout out to Willie Miles for rumbling and stumbling. If you've not seen it, look it up. It is, in fact, in the process, and I'll show you the video at the end of the segment, the process of him scoring this touchdown, he actually inadvertently strikes the Heisman pose, like perfectly.
Inadvertently.
And it's glorious. I love any kind of thick six. This might be the thickest six I've ever seen.
And what a name, Willie Miles.
That just sounds like a defensive lineman, right?
It does. I actually have one real quick, Tyler.
Okay.
I just came up with my answer.
Okay.
Not the big, but the biggest combined with most impressive, Jock McKissick from Clemson in the Clemson-Carolina game one year. If I'm remembering correctly, he returned and he somehow got his hands on an interception and returned it. I think it was 82 yards for a touchdown, and he was listed at 6'6", 295.
Wow.
It was pretty good.
That's still, yeah. That's big. That's big, but also Willie Miles is like 5'9", 350.
No,
so he's a unit.
That makes it
that's
even
for sure.
better.
But shout out to him, and there's a great video out there if you can find it of his teammates, giving him his praise for that, because that was really cool to see. You probably didn't pay attention to Notre Dame handling Virginia over the weekend, but you may have seen Notre Dame ran an old classic, the Fumble-Rooski.
Yep.
A 78-yard fake punt touchdown. Jordan Faison, the wide receiver, takes it all the way in until it gets called back for, I believe, an illegal procedure, because essentially the up back took the snap, and it appears he's going out to the right on a pitch play, but he leaves the ball on the ground for Faison to pick up and run around the left side, score the touchdown. They called illegal procedure on this, but our guy John Bryce, and we didn't get a chance to get into this with him, has a thorough breakdown on why this should not have been a penalty and this should have stood. Jason Garrett on the call for NBC said this is the most impressive play he's ever seen in his life.
So what is the and I'm going to read, I have Bryce's piece bookmarked, but what is the reason?
It would take too long to explain. I read his piece because he gives a breakdown of what they called and why it shouldn't have been, because there's a lot of moving parts here. But again, the Fumble-Rooski made famous by Nebraska back in the day, where you purposely leave the ball on the ground for a guy to pick up and take in on a play where I don't think that, because I think Faison technically was not eligible to receive the ball based on where he was lined up. And there's also a numbering thing with punts, too, that gets kind of funky with this. Mm-hmm. But I believe Notre Dame was well within the rights of having these guys lined up this way. Again, it's a good read on John Bryce and footballscoop.com, because he makes a compelling point. This should have stood. And for how impressive it is, I'm with him.
I can't believe the officials got something wrong.
I know,
really,
right?
It's hard to believe based on what we've seen.
They were only at 14-0 at this point in time. That was it didn't end up mattering at the end of the game because they won regardless, but that could have been a big kind of nail in the coffin for them.
There was also, Tyler, do you have another one, by the way?
I have a couple. You have one?
There's one that they're showing right now on Read and React with Roman Harper and Cole Kubulik. It appears that we had, well, I don't want to say for sure. It was real. I thought it was a fake hamstring pull, which you see on celebrations a lot.
Sure.
I think it was a real hamstring pull lateral for a touchdown. That was weird.
Nice.
The Fordham game.
Here's one more for you. Incarnate Word taking on Stephen F. Austin. Incarnate Word throws an interception at the goal line. Stephen F. Austin returns it back to the 50, only to immediately fumble it back to Incarnate Word at the 50-yard line, giving them a fresh set of downs. Late in the fourth quarter, where Incarnate Word was already up by 7. So essentially, Stephen F. Austin intercepts the pass to give them life to potentially get back and tie this game, only to fumble the ball at the 50-yard line and give it back to Stephen F. Austin once again.
Is that Stone Cold Stephen Austin?
Stone Cold Stephen F. Austin. Yes, same guy. Incarnate Word, the former home of Cam Ward, by the way.
Yes.
Before going to Wazoo and now to Miami.
I think he probably needed to move up a level. Nothing against those guys.
You know what? The first time I ever remember hearing about Incarnate Word football was when, I think it was 2014, when Baylor was left out of the playoff. And one of the biggest knocks on them was their non-conference slate included Incarnate Word, who at that point in time was still an FCS team, or I think in their first year in the FCS. Everybody was like, I've never heard of this team. Why are you playing them? You're Baylor. Do better than that.
I remember they had, what's the guy, G.J. Kinney or something. I think he's at Texas State now. He was their head coach, putting up big numbers. Couldn't tell you their mascot.
Some kind of bird. I think it's a cardinal. That'll do it for the Gamecock Club Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Coming up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Tuesday here in the game.
All right, another one of our great partners here on the game, Classic Roofing, Joe Reeder, Max Sawyer. We saw him the other day out at Gold Line Framing, by the way. Good to see those guys. Reliable GAF certified roofer near you. Families that live right here in the Midlands, only about 7% of roofers nationwide have a GAF certification. So when you work with Classic Roofing, you know you're getting a reliable roofer. They know what they're doing. They're local to the Midlands. It's important to me and my family when we're finding businesses to work with. If it's important to you, check out Classic Roofing. ClassicRoofingSC.com, 803-590-7870. Here for all your roofing needs, roof inspections, roof installations, roof replacements, and roof repairs. They can help you design your new roof with their virtual design tool online, or you can get a free estimate from your home. 803-590-7870. That's our friends Joe Reeder, Max Sawyer at ClassicRoofingSC.com.